had a big week between having
Death
new
and
people and
life.
burying old people.
Yeah. We had a whole circle of life this week, I guess.
Well, he didn't get buried; he got cremated. But still,
Well,
we
that's the same
have
thing.
experienced the entire gamut
Yeah.
of those things.
Yeah.
And then I did. We talked about my blood work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were telling me about that.
This is we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I have moved from handling my own PEDs to having that completely overseen by a doctor. And I actually told you mine was a little bit lower than it was, but it's by very, very little. So it wasn't much of an exaggeration, but in March, or actually beginning of April, about 1 month out from my meet, I had done 500 tests and between 150 and 300 tren. I upped the tren like 4 weeks out from the meet.
Mhm.
So about 800 milligrams of drugs. Leading into that, exactly almost to the day, a month out, I went and got my blood work done. Granted, this was coming off of both the IT band injury and a back injury.
Mhm.
So I did have a lot of drugs in me, both painkillers and muscle relaxers and stuff like that would affect your kidney blood work. And also it atrophies muscle too.
Yeah.
So those things do. So, but anyway, I think I went from about 270 pounds to 283, which is kind of opposite of what I want to do because I am actually trying to lose weight. But in that weight gain, I lost 3% body fat, and almost 11 of the 13 pounds was muscle gain.
Yeah.
So I actually benefited quite a lot from that. Put a lot of muscle in my upper body and in my torso. A little disappointed about how little muscle I put in my legs, but mostly that's because couldn't squat heavy.
Injury related.
Is all injury related stuff. But I did manage to put some mass in my legs. All that stuff is really, really good.
And that is to say that was on a lower dose.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that here in just a second. But that's and in 3 months' time, I put on basically that 11 pounds of muscle.
Mhm.
And only 13 total pounds. So that was an incredibly large amount of muscle for the weight that I gained.
Yeah.
I think most people could do about half that. They'd be happy. I think most of the time. But anyway, it was an incredibly big benefit to me. And then, like I said, this is in 3 months' time. My natural test went from 156 to 1456.
Mm-hmm. That was free test.
Yeah. So my testosterone went up 1,300 points.
Mm-hmm.
Or 1,300 units
per deciliter.
Deciliter of blood,
I think it's deciliter.
So, an incredible improvement. My progesterone is up in a healthy area again. DHEA, vitamin D, all that stuff. And what the incredible thing is about it, the only thing I took was 200 milligrams a week of test and 100 milligrams a night of progesterone.
Mm-hmm. That's TRT doses. Maybe a little more.
Yeah, a little more than most people, but mine was detrimentally low.
Right.
So most of the time people get 100 milligrams a week or 200 biweekly.
Yeah.
So, but that's still roughly a quarter
Mm-hmm.
of the performance enhancing dose I was taking. And I've put more muscle on and actually performed better. And I do feel really, really good.
Yeah.
Also, red blood cell count has improved. White blood cell count stayed about the same. That shouldn't really move a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Hemoglobin's down. Insulin resistance is much, much lower.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. So that's a very surprising metric, having gained 13 pounds.
Right.
The fact my insulin dropped, basically cut my insulin in half. Went from being pre-diabetic to almost. I'm like a point and a half away from being like an athletic insulin range.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fucking huge. Trying to think about all my kidney and liver markers are actually in a safe zone now, and they were all borderline. Like when Dr. Campbell first met me, he was like, "If you don't change this, this, and this, you're gonna be on dialysis by the time you're 40."
Right.
Because there were some crazy kidney numbers, but now talking with him about what was happening with me and the amount of medication I was on because of that back injury, it was probably an acute spike.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably wasn't as deadly as
it looked.
on paper. Yeah, on paper. But nevertheless, all that stuff's back into everything except for creatinine is back into a normal range, which apparently that's going to be high with lots of protein and meat consumption. But the only thing I can't do is he really doesn't want me supplementing creatine because that creatinine is so high currently. But,
gotcha.
HGH is still really high. It did come down some, which was kind of funny to me.
It was kind of odd.
But yeah, everything's back into more than healthy range. So healthy range is, they say that, they kind of brag about people being able to, they've been able to take people in a healthy way to about 2,000 on their test. But they did say anything about 1,100, you could start experiencing side effects. So I'm at basically 1,500 with no
visible side effects.
No visible side effects. Don't feel bad. Feel great. Pretty fucking awesome. And I'll just say this too: the progesterone getting tanked on my blood work was because of antidepressants, was because of SSRIs, and because of tren. 19 Nors will do that too. So the combination of those things like tanked my natural progesterone levels. And I didn't know this because it's a female sex hormone. It's not a male sex hormone, but men have to have it to produce their own test. It's also directly related to sex drive and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's not, I think the meathead juice crew, you'll never hear a meathead in the gym talk about whether or not your progesterone levels are healthy or not.
Right.
You hear them talk about, the smarter ones will talk about, estrogen needs to stay under a certain number, but you never hear them say,
right,
get your progesterone checked. But that's actually a huge fucking thing, especially if you've used a lot of 19 Nors like me and you have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I've already decided, like, after this meet coming up, I'll probably move over there too. It'll probably be like the beginning of next year or something.
I think the killer thing about it is, it's right now I've met my deductible and stuff, so it's really cheap, but it's still cheaper than street prices.
Yeah.
So that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But outside of that, they put me on Ganatorilin, which is a type of HCG. Vitamin B12, D3. Told you all we were on the DHEA. I take a lot of pills, but man, it's completely changed.
Yeah.
Everything.
Hey, would you rather be on a bunch of pills or be on a bunch of injectables? I'd rather be on a bunch of pills all day, personally. But
yeah, injecting it kind of sucks. I can't lie to you, but today is actually an injection day. I'm glad that we're talking about this because I would have forgotten otherwise. But the one time a week's pretty tolerable.
Yeah.
When I go, it's going to be a drag when I go back to a performance enhancing dose, and it's whatever a week, 2 or 3.
Probably at least 2, if not 3.
I honestly think I think performance wise, I'm going to do fine on 2 now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think 400 milligrams a week is going to be my blast.
Yeah. I never had any interest in going super high after this past time because I just didn't feel like it was doing enough. And talking to, or really listening to other people talk about, what they use and how they use it. Talking to Joe here lately about it. We actually, not too long ago, might have been like a couple of days ago, had a conversation. I posted that picture of my back. And we just kind of started talking about bodybuilding a little bit, and I was like, well, do you even think it's possible to actually compete in a bodybuilding show as an enhanced lifter without taking a bunch of stuff? And he's like, all of my clients do that. And I was like, he's only got 2 or 3 bodybuilding clients, but one of them is Kenny, who we talked about before we started recording. If you don't know who Kenny Williams is, he works at Super Training with Mark Bell.
He does a minimal amount?
Minimal amount. So I don't know what that means for him because I didn't ask.
Honestly, in the bodybuilding community, I'm just going to assume it's less than $1,000 a week.
So I know what Joe told me was that for him personally, it was like a max at like 1.2 grams. Like that was his
across all compounds.
That was his maximal. Now I don't know him. I don't know what that means as far as what he does on a regular basis. What he does. I'm assuming that's
probably gets cycled in and out.
Yeah, I'm sure that's in prep, getting ready for whatever competition. I know he's working on the American Pro 2 right now, which is in October. It might be the same weekend as my meet, which is actually really funny. But
is yours in October?
Yeah, the last Saturday of October.
I thought yours was November for some reason.
No.
I've got, you're Joe's now, but I have a lot of meets right there around when my baby's going to be due, and I don't know how many of them I'm going to be streaming and how many of them I'm going to be in person.
Yeah.
And I have a big drug tested meet in November, then the Maverick in December.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah,
all
I
around.
have and then Dave in September.
Yeah.
Now he's competing again. I just wrote for him, which we'll get to that. 8 week, actually, I guess it'll be 9 or 10 weeks post New Orleans, but
Yeah.
he has some untested records that got beat that he wants to go take back. So
Fair is fair, I
Fair
guess,
is fair,
right?
right? Yeah,
I
so-
can't say I wouldn't feel the same way if I go and break these records and then someone comes in and smashes them. I'm like, well, man, gotta.
I think he. Broken is broken, right? But I don't think they were quite smashed. He's definitely confident that he can go
Yeah. Well,
get them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, I guess. Yeah.
But
It's the language, right?
either
Getting beat's
way,
getting beat. Right?
Getting beat's
Yeah,
getting
getting
beat.
beat's getting beat.
Getting
so.
beat by a pound or 100 pounds is still getting beat.
It almost probably has more peace of mind as a power lifter if you get beat by
100 pounds as
100
opposed to
pounds
like
is
5.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do I really have to go to a meet like this soon just because this guy
right.
broke
yeah.
my record by 5 pounds? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more peace of mind than just getting your ass drugged, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'd rather be like, all right, now I got to train for like a year and a half, 2 years just to get close to this guy. And hopefully he's not going to get better.
And hopefully I'm going to be injury free.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
But I feel like longer off season, you take, the more likely you are to be injury free.
So this is a touch and go week for you in the gym. So what did you do in the gym this week?
So it was, I went in on Monday and just kind of was like, I'm just going to do the best that I can do. I didn't have to work, so it wasn't a big deal. I got everything done. And then I was like, well, it was Monday.
What did you do on Monday?
Was
it your squat
It was
bench day?
squat and bench. I'm gonna have to pull it up to really give some specifics because I actually don't remember.
Well, you've had that kind of week.
It's been a cluster of a week, so bear with me, guys. I gotta pull all this up. All right. It was squat. So I had 5 sets of 1 for explosiveness. At 50%, which was 280, 275. It was 275. And then he had me 3 sets of 3 at 415, which weren't terrible. I feel like they were manageable. The rest time was kind of what got me, which it was a longer rest time. It was 3 minutes, but I'm not used to getting in it quite that quick, and especially being up in weight, which 415 is still like 80%, something like that. So it's not like it should be that heavy, but just getting readjusted is kind of a challenge. And then it was just a bunch of accessory work, a bunch of this bullshit that he likes to do, giving me 30 seconds on and then 5 to 10 reps after 30 seconds of constant work, which will fucking destroy you no matter what movement you're doing, no matter how heavy it is. If you're putting effort into those 30 seconds, those last reps are going to be brutal.
Sure.
And it's happened every time. So I did that and then got to the hospital at 6 and stayed there for a couple days, had a baby. It was pretty exciting. It was fairly traumatic, and I'm not going to go into any details on the podcast, but it was all good after everything was said and done. So
Good.
Trouble sleeping, mostly because it was a hospital bed. The baby slept fine. At least at the hospital, she slept fine, and mostly because we were just like there the whole time.
Sure.
We went back to the gym on Thursday. I think it was just like a regular like pump day. Yeah, it was just like a bunch of back and shoulders, which were fine. I did feel like I was dead and everything hurt because I had no sleep and my nutrition was garbage. Not just to touch on that a little bit. If your sleep and nutrition are garbage, you're gonna feel like garbage. And even in just a matter of 2 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you will notice a huge difference. And then Friday was some deadlifts. They kind of felt like shit, but there's also something weird going on with my glutes, and we're still trying to figure that out. He had me doing some weird supersets with like some explosive deadlifts and jumps, box jumps. So trying to get some more glute engagement, more explosiveness out of the hole, basically. And then I was doing the hip abduction, and I noticed my right glute was straining really hard, my left was not. Like it would be like hurting, and I was like, what's going on with there. So I like put my thumbs on my butt cheeks, and I noticed that my right was sticking out super far and my left was not engaged at all. So, and I was thinking about it, during deadlifts, my lower back on my left side had been kind of bothering me. And I was like, my left glute, for whatever reason, is not engaging. So I focused more on pushing with my left hip out and less on my right. And I noticed a more even production of force. So hopefully we're going to fix that here shortly and I won't have any more issues. But I just keep finding more and more I work with Joe, the more I find issues with everything wrong with my body.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is a good thing because we're fixing them.
Right.
And then the last day was just it was just kind of like it was a pump day. It was like legs and chest and arms, pretty much it. It was a good day though. I had a really solid leg pump again with the 30 seconds on with the leg press, and then 10 reps after that. Man, I wanted to kill myself. I was literally like, after each set, I would rack the leg press and I'd just lay there and I just like audibly like sighing and just like crying on the inside because it hurt so bad. But hopefully that's going to result in a lot of power off the floor from squats, and
yeah,
we'll see.
Sounds good, man.
Squats are my enemy.
Yeah, same.
Public enemy number one, squats.
I understand. Yeah, so I wrapping up my RP block. Of course, I've been without I think I told you I've been without the app for a little while, but I just continued it on my own.
Yeah.
I've been on a 6-day split, so chest, back, and arms, shoulders and back, legs. And then that repeats with a new group of exercises the next 3 days, if that makes sense. First 3 days I went pretty hard, worked up some decent singles on bench and on was SSB? No, it was regular back squat. And pretty good shoulder day in the first half of the week. And then just started having some hip and, I wouldn't say necessarily pain, but some hip and shoulder discomfort toward the end of the week. So I opted to take a deload in the second half. Went pretty easy. I didn't squat more than 2 plates, didn't press. I was on incline, so I didn't press more than 2 plates. And then shoulder day was really, really kind of pretty easy, kind of meandered through it in a way.
Right.
Got all the work done, but just didn't have a lot of energy the second half of the week. So, but spent all day today writing programs for clients. Tonight I have one more client program to write, and then I'm going to write still an off season, but I'm going to write my first powerlifting block back since I left Ron. So
that was in November.
I started with Ron in November. Yeah. And it ran, and he got me through March. So this will be the first powerlifting program I've programmed for myself in a while.
Yeah.
But I haven't been deadlifting. Part of that's just I want to get back to deadlifting.
Yeah.
Volume, how I approach volume, stuff like that, still pretty much going to be RP protocols.
Yeah.
With the exception, I'm just going to be barbell centric.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. It'll be more like a power building.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still talking about, I don't know how I'm going to manage my deadlift volume yet. I'm thinking about using something that Ron does. And I don't know if you've said Joe uses this for you or not, but I'm thinking about doing it's a CrossFit format, but I'm thinking about doing like every minute on the minute at a pretty lightweight and 2 to 5 reps.
Yes and no, because he just changes his rest periods depending on the movement and the weight.
Every minute on the minute ends up being roughly about 45 seconds rest. It ends up being pretty quick.
He usually on his quick ones, he'll give me like 60 seconds. I do have one exercise that has 10 seconds rest, which is a little weird, but it's manageable because of the way that it's just a dumbbell fly. So I just go pretty light.
That's fair.
It's only 10 seconds rest, but everything else is usually 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Those are usually how he breaks his rest periods now.
So, mainly I'm still trying to rebuild a squat. So I think I'm going to be, I'm going to use my paused high bar squat PR as my actual training 1 rep max for low bar, so I can get some volume in at heavy enough weight that there's stimulus, but not so heavy that I'm revisiting injuries or anything like that. So that's a pretty big, that's a 100-pound difference. In my low bar PR and my paused high bar PR.
Right.
So I mean, it's a pretty huge difference. But I am going to do that, and then I've chunked around the idea of kind of restarting bench again, but it's going so well that I feel like I'd be taking weight off my total if I started over.
Yeah.
On bench again or used a false number. So I think I'm just going to stay aggressive and bench. And if I just end up with a 400-pound bench press and a 400-pound squat, it is what it is. What it is. Yeah. But I mean, I've been touching 340 to 365 relatively easy on bench press. So RPE 7 to 8 depending on how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So like I don't feel terribly bad about staying in the bench press because I'm injury free for the most part on bench press right now, so that's pretty good. And then deadlift's I'm just going to try to just get back to having some type of work capacity on deadlift. So I haven't been doing it, so just deadlifting is going to yield deadlifting gains at the at the moment.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I don't really have to. It's kind of low pressure, but we're talking about even on barbell movements, 8 to 15 reps a set. We're very, very far out from actually competing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, 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 very far out. Still very much rehabbing that movement. So it should be fun. Also, whether or not I can actually stay on the program or write myself is yet to be seen. I do really well when I'm being coached or I have a template or something like that, but
I start nitpicking.
I get a little antsy and in my own head when I'm running my own program.
Well, I noticed this today, so I think I need to change this, and this to handle this. So.
I will say my focus away from the barbell is still very much going to be unilateral movement. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's going to ultimately fix my leg issues.
More than likely, I think so.
So, and even some upper body issues. I'll be honest with you. I have a massively strong chest, and I still don't really have strong delts or a strong tricep.
Yeah.
So. You're probably clearing the stack on tricep pushdowns and, for 10 to 15 reps.
Truthfully,
probably don't have to after a heavy press day. But
currently, I just don't have that sort of stuff in my program.
That's
just the way Joe programs. It's not like I'll do a heavy set of this accessory work. A lot of my accessory work is really hypertrophy based. So it's just like a bunch of reps in low rest time and set it at an RPE, whatever. And most of my, I did 4 sets of 15 on the tricep machine, the handle. I don't know what the difference is with the one you hold like this.
Yeah, it's like a skull crusher machine, but you're set upright instead of laying prone.
Yeah. So I did that with like 185 pounds for 4 sets of 15, but 90 seconds rest. So I can't really
You're not exactly going to be able to just crush the weight on that.
No, I can't just throw two.
That's fair.
Whatever the full stack is, over 200 pounds when I've only got 90 seconds.
I don't have a lot of patience for my accessory work, so I would gather I'm resting 45 seconds to a minute and a half tops anyway.
Yeah.
Because by that time I'm already pretty smoked from everything else I've done, and it's about time for me to just want to get out of it. I don't skip it ever, but by that time my patience is.
Yeah, you're just kind of ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready for it to be done. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, rebuilding the squat's still number one, and I just don't think I'm going to abandon my bench press because that's something I can probably lean on in the future. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so me writing my own program brings up the topic of the day. I guess we need to talk about drinks and PR songs.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
We kind of had a really awesome segue, but we missed a couple things. So
it is what it is.
Drinks are pretty easy though. Drinks we just did.
It's the Shanky's Shanky's Whip Old Fashioned again. We got the Woodford cherries. They're delicious. It's the same 3 ounces of liquor, 1 ounce of simple syrup, chocolate bitters to taste.
Put some cherry juice in there too.
Yeah, I did. What I did this time is I basically did a 1/2 ounce of cherry juice and a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup because
they're both
plenty of sugar.
Yeah,
absolutely. So the difference is the cherry juice does have a little bit of bourbon in it because it's a Woodford cherry, so it's probably a little more alcoholic than usual.
But it honestly doesn't taste like it.
No, it's really easy to drink. Yeah,
super smooth,
super fucking good. And then PR songs. This is not a very well thought out one on my behalf today, to be honest with you.
Same, because I don't have anything that I had written down, even though I listened to several songs on Spotify and I was like, that should go on the list. So what I'm going to have to, actually, you know what? I'm just going to plug real quick. So we're friends with Clay and Wes. Wes is my cousin, but Misery Chastain's EP is out on Spotify.
Yeah, 14 years after it actually happened.
Yeah.
14, 15
Band
years ago.
no longer exists. They are no longer active. But man, I was listening to it in the gym and I was like, this still holds up. Like,
Yeah, I mean, they were...
if the quality, like the sound quality was better, man, I could just, I did literally sit there and listen to it from beginning to end. Just like, this is still good. Like, I can still get into this.
Right.
And I can listen to it in the gym too. So
Boy,
it's like,
that drum recording, the 100% trigger drum is
Yep.
like it's a little grating.
yeah.
But
that's
outside,
fair.
I remember when it came out, it was one of the best sounding records around here.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Like
it's
locally
great.
recorded. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just a little dull sounding now. It's not crisp. It's,
Yeah.
definitely recorded on a budget,
Yeah.
Honestly, and I even mentioned this to Clay. I was like, man, you could remaster this with stuff at your house and probably sound better. Like, I don't know why you guys don't just go ahead and do
There's
that.
nothing in the mastering process that's going to fix that kick drum.
No, I mean
But
like just re-recording it.
Yeah.
Like re-recording the whole thing at
Yeah.
home.
You can do that.
Because like the quality of stuff that you can do at home now is so high. You could just
yeah, I mean, it's changed dramatically since 2009.
yeah.
Like, dramatically.
Mhm.
Almost all that software is native now, and you can do all that with a plug-in and never have to
Mhm.
load in an amp.
Yeah.
You can do it with an electric kit,
Mhm.
and it sound more real than the trigger drums did back then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild.
Mhm. But yeah, go listen, go give them a listen. It just got posted yesterday or the day before, so go check them out. It's really good. The whole EP's good from start to finish. If you like a more classic like deathcore, death metal sound. I don't know if they'd hate me for calling it deathcore, but it kind of is deathcore.
Yeah, they probably would, but that's what it is.
It's
100%.
like
It may be even lean a little metalcore. Honestly.
yeah,
Listen to
like
that now.
it's
It wasn't metalcore for that era, but it's what modern metalcore sounds like.
yeah, that'd be pretty accurate. But it's heavy enough, so like
Yeah. It definitely isn't like All That Remains or Killswitch. It's
no,
definitely
it's
heavier
it's
than
not
that.
quite that light. It's I'm trying to think of a good band. I would say it's like Whitechapel, but not quite as heavy.
I'll tell you a good comparison for them really is Thy Art Is Murder.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Probably. Well, definitely pretty deathy riffs.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely got some more breakdowny hardcore vibes in it still.
Yeah.
But mostly death metal, I would
Yeah.
say. But
We'll just stick with the title mostly death metal.
it's like dying metal. It's not quite death yet.
good enough. Anyway, go check them out. It's really good. Like I said, sound quality might be kind of hard to get into at first, but once you get about a couple minutes in, you kind of just get used
Yeah,
to it.
they were good musicians. That was a good band.
It's
So
definitely good.
Seth Kimbrough's vocals were still good on it. Held up really well.
He's solid. Like, I don't know if he's doing anything musically anymore, but he was a cool dude, and he was a talented musician. Everybody in the band was talented. I mean, I'm just being
For sure, yeah, that was a good band.
It's just a shame that they split up and they didn't win that. I was at I think it was their last show, and I may have talked about this before. It was that Battle of the Bands they did that was supposed to be for Warped Tour. And
Was it Warped Tour or Music as a Weapon? I think it was Music as a Weapon. The only reason I say that is because I watched the band that beat them at Music as a Weapon.
maybe it was Music as well. I thought it was Warped
But
Tour.
that year at Music as a Weapon was actually good. Obviously, we didn't watch Disturbed, but Killswitch was on that tour, and Chimera, and
yeah, I think that was it then. Yeah.
a couple others. Yeah, that was
that-
it was at the Atlanta Tattoo and Arts Convention.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And it was yeah.
But the band that won was like dog shit.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. We actually did watch them. We got way too drunk in the parking lot and missed all the good bands,
So they were
except
just
for
there
Killswitch. But they just happened to be there while we were.
waiting for Killswitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just at the show, like most of the bands were just really loud, but Misery sounded really good. Like
Yeah.
they just had a very clean sound the whole way through. You could get into the music, whereas the band that won, it was just a lot of breakdowns and a lot of noise. And I was just kind of like not into it.
I like some of that dissonant shit now, but they definitely rubbed me the wrong way when I
it would
listened
be-
to them back then.
No, it'd be fine if it was like listenable, but it just wasn't listenable. It was literally too loud. They didn't mix it well. That was the problem.
That's fair. We're gonna go an oldie but a goodie, and it's gonna be the only one I do today. Especially since you put a whole EP, but I'm gonna count it as one. I'm gonna do "Domination" by Pantera from the Cowboys from Hell record. So
you can pretty much put anything aside from Cemetery Gates on there, and I'd probably be good.
I don't hate Cemetery Gates.
I don't hate the song. It's just not a good PR song.
Yeah, it's not a gym song. No, not at all.
I will listen to it on the road all day. I will not listen to it in the gym.
Yeah, it's not a gym song. I agree with you. I listen to some relatively light things sometimes on the playlist. But,
oh, me too.
But that's not it though.
I will put myself under the bus here. There is a Devil Wears Prada song that is on my gym playlist.
Man, Christian metalcore.
Are they still Christian metal? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't care. They were at one point.
Yeah.
So, but what song? I have to ask.
It's a new song. It's called Time. It's very, very. I want to say it's very bad, but I like it.
That's fair.
It's like
some of their newer stuff does kind of remind me of old Bring Me the Horizon when Bring Me the Horizon was a little heavier and a little better.
It's not heavy.
It's not heavy.
Oh, it is not heavy.
No.
This is not a heavy song.
Keep in mind the recent stuff for me for them is probably still a 7 or 8 year old record.
Yeah. No, I mean I don't think they've done anything heavy in a while, if I'm being honest. Because this new album, I literally hated it all except for this one song, and I kind of hate it because it's really cheesy. But I listen to it. I'm like, just get into it. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
I mean, we talked about that, like the new Bring Me the Horizons that way. We compared them again, but
they had that one song. What was it called?
You talking about
Bring Me the Horizon? They had that one song off that new record.
Kingslayer is my favorite one off that record, but
maybe it wasn't Bring Me the Horizon.
Baby Metal, but they had. I know which one you're talking about because it's fucking awesome. It's Parasite Eve, right?
I think maybe so. Yeah.
I think we had a conversation about that because that was named after a video game, right?
Yeah.
And you said it was Parasite Eve was a video game?
Yeah. Old PlayStation 1, I think. Long time ago.
Fair. Old game. Anyway, moving on into the actual topic, and that is basically programming again, right?
Pretty much. So we just talked about a lot of signs about bad templates and stuff. So, we were talking about it. It's like a good segue from last episode would be just talk about good programming and
that's absolutely true. I think most of the things that we were talking about being some of the better templates were either templates that were open-ended, like the RP template. Mm-hmm. They're all reps and reserve based, or they're AMRAP based, basically.
Yeah.
Which auto-regulates you in and of itself. That means, if you choose to move up, if you can't overhead press, 30s for a set of 10, and you finally get to where you can, and then you move up to 35s and you only get 6, you're still operating within the parameters of auto-regulation and that reps and reserve that they set you out. Yeah. Now, RP doesn't want you to drop below 5 reps on anything.
Okay.
But still, you're still operating within the parameters of the thing. So there's a faction of auto-regulation that happens that makes those type of templates better than the others.
Right.
The AI is even further in that it's going to adjust to how you feel that day. Going to adjust either the total number of sets you do, the amount of weight you do, or the RPE you do it at, right? So they're going to be adjusted for you. So that's the reason why I think we're pretty much in agreement. Those are better template options than
just buying something from Joe Schmo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess long and short of this is we're going to get into why custom programming and actually getting programmed from a coach, even if they're not actively coaching you, if all they do is program for you, or if they're actually one-on-one with you and telling you how to squat, bench, and deadlift better, whatever that may be, the benefits of, or even maybe you're doing your own like me and you have for years, the benefits and the things you need to know to look for, what makes a good program good.
Right.
If it lacks these things, it might be less good.
Right. Because if you're doing your own programming and you're just kind of like, well, let's say you're doing a powerlifting program. All right, I know I need to squat, bench, deadlift. I need to do some sort of back movement. I'm going to do pull downs and pull downs and pull downs.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but what about your rows?
Yeah.
Like, people just kind of like throwing shit in there and not really thinking about getting the entirety of the musculature, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do stuff like that. I do very, very simply. If I have a vertical pull on one, if I have a vertical pull for one back exercise, whether I do another back exercise later in the day or if it happens later in the week, it doesn't matter. Typically, it's going to be complemented by a horizontal pull. So if I've done a pull-up, chances are the next major back movement you're going to do is going to look like a bent over row or maybe a cable row. pretty, that's the easiest way to adjust,
Yeah.
Things like that. We also, in powerlifting, we do a lot of pushing. So you've heard me talk about before, I like a 2-to-1 pull to push ratio
Yeah.
For shoulder health reasons. So that includes shoulders. So do very little front delt work, but all the front delt work I do, if I've done a front delt, then I know I need to do some combination of 2 exercises, a rear delt, rhomboid, lat, something to balance out those 2 pushes, or that 1 push, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, little things like that. Same thing with leg stuff. We don't do a lot of things. We pretty much act in a single plane in powerlifting. We don't do a lot of side-to-side stuff, but, if I've done X amount of quads, I know I need to X amount of hamstring work. If I do X amount of bilateral movement, I need X amount of unilateral movement, right? Those are the things that coaches are going to understand. Furthermore, depending on your situation, I, for one, right now need more unilateral movement. So my accessory work is going to be more unilateral movement, right?
Which, just a side note, either you would know this because you are well-versed enough that you can identify this problem, or your coach should know this. That's one of the benefits of having a coach, is if you don't know these things, they can be like, well, I noticed that you have a weak left leg, so what we're going to do is do more unilateral work so that we can increase the strength in the left leg.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, signs in that yourself, if you don't want to have, if you can't afford the coach to tell you those things, are you just simply weaker on one side than the other?
Yeah.
When you do a single leg press, is your left weaker than your right?
Are they less balanced? Do you shake a lot?
Do you shift in your squat?
Yeah.
Do you shift in your bench press? Do you lock one hand out before you lock the other one out in your bench press? That's a little bit more nuanced, because that could be front delt, it could be your left pec, it could be your left tricep, it could be, any number of the pressing muscles right there.
Right.
But,
But let's say, just to go into that a little bit, if you notice that on the bench press, that is the problem, you start identifying that by, okay, I'm going to do single raises, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do one at a time. Does my left delt tire out first? No. Go to the tricep.
Yeah.
Just go through the motions.
Yeah, basically you can just break it down to where you're doing all those movements unilaterally. Yeah. Even if it's a dumbbell bench press where you're doing both arms at the same time, is the left obviously getting more fatigued?
Yeah. Is it shaking? Is it becoming a struggle? Are you having to focus more on it?
Dumbbell skull crushers, is your left giving up before your right, or vice versa? It doesn't have to always be left.
That could also be done on cable. But
yeah, absolutely. It could absolutely be done. But little things like that. Another obvious thing is, are you experiencing more? I mean, you said it when your lower back with your glute was a sign that your left glute wasn't firing as good as your right glute.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing pain more to one side than the other side? Really, really simple stuff. Now, that's barring some injury history. Like if you've had a torn right rotator cuff,
right,
then
you're probably just going to have more pain.
Exactly, But, there's like nuanced answers like that. But those little nuances is the things you need to look for in yourself, or a coach should be looking for you, and then applying those to your program.
Also, if you have a coach, tell them that you're experiencing these things, because they can't read your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can look and they can see things, but they can't know the pain that you're feeling if you're feeling pain. So if you're not telling them that, they don't know. How to address it.
I tell people this all the time. You're not in trouble because you're hurting, but I can't protect you from what I don't know.
Exactly.
If you don't tell me, I can protect you from a lot. If you say, my left knee is really fucking bothering me in this movement, well, we can modify or take it out or make the appropriate, change to still get you stimulus there without bothering your knee.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as simple as we're doing walking lunges. Well, your knees hurt. We're going to do reverse lunges now. Is it more glute dominant? Sure, but you're still getting good quad work and good unilateral movement out of it. So, it's like little things like that, right? And those things are harder to identify in yourself. Those are questions you should ask yourself if you're doing your own programming. Those are all, we could have an entire podcast on just those things. Those things are extremely nuanced and extremely individual. So having mentioned all of this and the things that you should look out for in terms of that, I think it probably would behoove us to go ahead and talk about more general things. And that's where I start first, is minimum effective volume. So minimal effective volume is exactly what it sounds. It's the least amount of work you can do and still see results.
Yep.
Pretty simple. It's the least amount of work you can do and still see progressive results, basically. Work that you can build on, you can add weight to, stuff like that. Simple enough, right? Determining MEV I really like Juggernaut's way, and that's how me and you learned to determine our own MEV. Is very, very individual too.
Yeah.
Your coach is probably going to, in the beginning, a lot of coaches, because they don't know you yet, are probably going to lean to giving you more volume than you can probably handle, realistically. You've probably just experienced that with Joe to some extent.
To some extent.
There's been more time related, probably.
Yeah,
than
it's been more of a rest period fatigue than anything else.
But like a lot of the times, I will, if you're brand new to me, everybody thinks they're tougher than they are. I'll tell you that much, especially when you're programming for men. I do have like a general format that I kind of start all men or women on because the protocol is a little bit different. That I will either add to or take away from based on that person's how they're recovering. If that makes sense. I have a lot of heavyweight men. So just give this an example. Typically, we're only going to do barbell work wise. We're only going to do 3 or 4 working sets a day of your major compound lift. So probably bench press on an upper body or overhead press. We're going to get 3 to 4 main sets. And then we'll either have we'll have a top set, or we might have a drop set where we do an AMRAP, depending on somebody's need, right? So like we're talking about basically 4 to 5 sets per an upper body movement. Lower body is a little bit different. It's 3 or 4 in total, including a drop set or a top set, whatever. And then based on how they're recovering, I find that most of the time I end up taking away for my heavyweight men. So a squat day might look like a top set of 5 at a given RPE or a given percentage, and then you'll have 2 drop sets at 5 to 10% lower for 8 to 10 reps, if that makes sense. But it ends up being 3 or 4 sets. Deadlifts are typically harder on us bigger guys, especially when we're really good at deadlifts, like me and you are. So typically I have 1 top set and then only 1 or 2 drop sets thereafter. But for the most part, I start out with 4 to 5 upper body and 3 to 4 lower body. Yeah. And then as I get to know them it generally takes through a block, I adjust in future blocks for those things. Yeah. But the MEV, when we finally can establish some MEV and say, hey, this is the bare minimum we can make progress with, we're going to start manipulating that, and that gets you closer to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is max recoverable volume.
Or MRV.
MRV, yeah. And that's basically the maximum amount of shit you can tolerate and still make progress.
Right.
You do want to be taken over that number sometimes because that's part of progressive overload. You want to be forced to recover from something that you want to have dug yourself a little bit of a hole to recover from and recover out of, if that makes sense.
Typically before a deload week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's in my programming, that's your peak week.
Yeah.
The way I handle peaks are the same. Your peak week of a block, not your peak week going into a meet. But your peak week of a block, the way I handle things is the same way Brandon Allen does. We typically have an AMRAP at the heaviest percentage we've done that month, basically, or that block. It still ends up being 1 set, but because you've done the whole block at 8 reps, and on your AMRAP, I might be expecting 12 plus. If they only get 6 or 7, that's fine too. But there's an expectation that you will exceed what we did that month. Right. Still ends up being the maximum. That plus the intensity ends up being the maximum amount of volume you can recover from. But yeah, you're essentially building to not just intensity, but basically building to a volume peak. Yeah. And then you take it down. I even do that with accessory work. We may add a set or add reps up to that peak week and then take it away at deload week. That's something RP does. They add sets based on how you're feeling every week. That works out pretty well, but there's a million ways to do that. But just know, again, both your MEV, your minimum effective volume, and your max recoverable volume is going to be lower if you're male, and it's going to be lower if you're heavier. So it also goes up if you're enhanced. Yes. So if you're using PEDs, you get more of those things. More nuanced things is like, do you have somebody that just eats like shit all the time? Yep. As a powerlifting coach, you don't always get to control what somebody's eating. Yeah. You would like to, but you don't always get to that. But that is something that would, if you eat like shit, that's going to generally net you 1 less set a week. And if you eat really good, it's going to net you 1 more set a week, depending on. PEDs don't help as much as you think they do in terms of recovery. They definitely help you recover, but you're still only talking about adding a set per exercise a week if you're enhanced.
Right.
You know, but at least for men, you know what I mean?
guess that depends on markers too, right? Because
It does. Yeah,
like if let's say they're really healthy and on PEDs, and let's say I don't know, let's say they go like a Joe Sullivan route and they're like on a minimal effective dose for most of their training, and then it's like, well, we're blasting for the next 8-12 weeks before the meet.
Yeah.
They probably can recover a little better. So you can probably afford to either give them a little more intensity or a little more volume.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does need to wave, like we said, based on you have to wave in and out of these things. Man, that being said, you know, having dealt with mostly heavier men, you know, when you started with me at 180 pounds, you know, it was pretty common for us to do, you know, 5-6 working sets of bench press or
really everything.
Just about everything.
The only thing
you recovered from it fine until you didn't.
Yeah.
But then you were up a couple of weight classes.
At that point, you know, so starting at 180, I feel like it was 5 sets of squats, 5 sets of bench press, and 4 sets of deadlift. It may have been 5 sets of deadlift. I don't remember.
5 would be. Well, I was younger in my career, so I probably knew less, so I don't doubt it. But 4 seems like a number I would absolutely program.
Yeah, so it was somewhere around there either way. But you know, not as heavy, not moving as much weight. I wasn't enhanced at the time, so I was natty. I was eating good because I was poor. Like I couldn't afford to eat bad, so it was just like protein, rice, and vegetables is all I ate, and eggs for breakfast. The only thing that I ate that was slightly bad was I was working at Jimmy John's, so I was eating a sandwich every day, but no mayo, lots of veggies and lots of protein. Wouldn't always be the leanest. It just depended on what I wanted to eat that day, but I just was like, as long as it's calories at this point. Because that was kind of like one of the bigger...
But you were eating enough and it was balanced enough that we could achieve what we needed to achieve. So, I mean, you know, even lighter weight men are going to get... I would say if you're sub 220, I would consider you a lightweight male lifter.
Yeah.
220 and up, you're probably going to start taking a set away for your body to accommodate your body weight.
Yeah.
To be honest,
it really wasn't until I got over 220 that I started noticing a need for it. To be honest with you,
right?
Like, really, the 230s, like, and it was probably when I was deadlifting over 500, closer to 600, that I really started noticing a need to break down the volume. I
know some people are listening and being like, wow, like 2 to 3 working sets on squat and deadlift doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're squatting and deadlifting, well, we're both, I can confidently say I can pick up more than 600 pounds now. When you're a 500 plus pound squatter, both of us are, and you're a 600 plus pound deadlifter, you're much closer to 7 now or better, but 2 to 3 sets is literally all you need. But what people tend to forget about when they write these programs is you have to warm up to that top set.
Yeah.
And whether you think that it does or not, you're one set at 135, you're one set at 225, you're one set at 315, you're one set at 405 on deadlift. That's stimulus too.
Yeah, you are accumulating fatigue.
You're accumulating fatigue and you're accumulating volume. And now when you get old like I have to feel heavy weight before I can just go pull heavy weight. Like I'm not walking up to 500 pounds right now and pulling it.
No.
Without a warm up. I mean, because I'm fucking old. I'm also out of practice. Anyway. You know what I mean? Now, you know, it's bad for you anyway. But like, you absolutely have to have that to warm up. But you are in fact accumulating fatigue. You have to prime your CNS. You have to get ready for heavyweight. But you are actually doing work through the warm up. So by the time you do, you have 2 or 3 working sets. But by the time you finish the 2 or 3 working sets, you've probably actually done 7 or 8 sets.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, easily. You know,
depending on how far you have to go, how many working sets you have, and what that weight is.
You know, there's a point where you're strong enough now. Like if I were programmed for you in Austin, I feel like we could confidently start our warm up with 2 plates on squat or deadlift. Probably not a lot of reason for us to hit 1 anymore. You know what I mean? I still
hit the bar on squats.
I mean, that's fine. I like it too.
Just personally, it's something that I've stuck to for the longest time, and it may be really dumb at this point. It may be a waste of energy at this point, but I feel like it's important to hit the bar to remind yourself that you're not above anything else, even if it's just completely a mental thing. It's just like it's practice too. Yeah, if you are not respecting just the bar, you're probably not respecting the rest of your warm up.
Yeah.
And if you're not respecting your warm up, you're more easily going to get hurt because you're just going to be going through the motions, slinging.
Yeah, and you're building good motor skills through the warm up too. That's your opportunity to practice new cues your coach has taught you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe old ones you're not that good at. You know, a lot of things. It's a good place to check your bar placement, your bar path, stuff like that.
The biggest thing that I've learned from Joe as regards training is lifting with intent.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness is exactly just like going in with a plan, doing exactly what the goal is of the day. You know, a lot of my goals of my squat was squat pain free. Like that was it. So it didn't matter that I was only squatting 200 pounds some days. I didn't care. The goal was to squat in a way that did not hurt.
Sure, absolutely.
And we accomplished it. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, right? I mean that is what it is. I mean, so having a coach help you determine that MEV, MRV, even if they're old school and they do it based off of how you feel, and that's how I'm not going to chart it out like Juggernaut has you do. If you were openly communicating with me and being honest about how you're feeling pre and post volume, we should have no problem figuring out what it is you can and cannot handle.
Yeah.
At all. It should be relatively easy to do. So I don't feel bad about, it's not guesswork, but I don't feel bad about adding and subtracting based on need.
Yeah.
I guess. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's something that the Juggernaut AI app does anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you come in, you say, how do you feel today? Do you feel like on top of the world or do you feel like dog shit? Do you feel beneath dog shit?
I tell people this all the time. The program's the program for a reason. We absolutely want to follow the program as close as we can. But doing the work is more important than not doing the work. So if it means doing the work at 135, even if it was supposed to be 315, I would rather you have gone to the gym and practiced squatting than have not squatted at all. I mean, I think that's the best. But I don't know those things unless you tell me.
Right. So if you come in and you're just like, you feel like shit, but you don't want to admit it. Like there's some sort of ego, some sort of pride, which you should leave that at the door when you walk in there. But something that keeps you from saying, oh, maybe you went out drinking a little and got a little too blitzed and you didn't recover very well.
As a coach, I'm not going to be happy about that, but I will help you adjust so you don't get hurt and we can continue the program on future dates.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's annoying. But, having a coach help you determine MEV and MRV, even if it's not an active conversation and they're just doing it based on need, if that's fair.
Yeah.
Which is a good segue to the next thing before we actually talk about styles of programming. And that's, I don't know necessarily that it's a buzzy word, but it's that principle of auto-regulation. And there's a lot of ways to achieve this.
Yeah.
The most common way currently to achieve auto-regulation is probably RPE.
Yeah.
But we talked about the Bulgarian method last week in weightlifting, where you worked up to a daily max in a push jerk or snatch or just your clean or just your front squat or just your back squat or whatever. You basically worked up to a daily 1 rep max. Well, that auto-regulates you to an extent because if you have to back squat 5 days a week and you just back squatted yesterday, guess what? It's probably not going to be as good as yesterday.
Yeah.
Your back squat, right? Like, so there is a principle of like natural CNS auto-regulation almost that happens when you do those things. So even something extreme like the Bulgarian method has some principle of auto-regulation in it. What doesn't auto-regulate is percentage-based programming.
Yeah.
That's a hard number that's been given to you for a reason. I still use a lot of percentage-based programming, and I do it guilt-free. But I also know built into the program is some reduction of actual percentages I expect. Because I know that that's essentially that's your coach auto-regulating you. You know what I mean? Like, I program it at, if I have something set out, maybe I'm actually programming you for a training max that's 50 pounds below your best. You might not know that, but that's the power of a coach too. Like, hey, we need this number for X amount of sets. I'm going to give you a hard number that's based off of a percentage. It's not your business to know what percentage, what number that percentage is based off of. You know what I mean? Because that's me taking care of you. But it's a harder idea when you're doing it yourself because you want that hard 85%
Mhm.
for 5 or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it is what it is. So anything basically that's not a hard number that they haven't given you, I need you to squat 315 for this many reps,
Mhm.
or I need you to squat this percentage for this many reps. Anything other than that, RIR, RPE, daily maxes like in conjugate, stuff like that, or your max effort day, whatever.
Right.
Those things are principle of auto regulation, essentially. So very, very trendy for that to happen. I've spoke before. I don't trust a lot of beginner to intermediate lifters with RPE because it's a very hard thing to fairly judge yourself.
Yeah. Until you really know your body, you have a mind-muscle connection, and you've pushed past what you thought was possible, it's pretty hard to know what actually is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, the 2 coaches that used RPE with me most predominantly were Ron, and then a coach that wasn't very good that I used in the very beginning. Both of them, though, same thing. We relied on what the RPE looked like, or the squat looked like, to judge our RPE more than what it felt like to judge our RPE. If you get under it, even if you feel like shit and you just absolutely throw it through the ceiling and you smoke it, sorry, dude, that's an RPE 6. You need to put 20 more pounds on it, go again. You know what I mean? Whatever it may be. So it's really, really hard to accurately judge that for yourself if you're not having a coach like
watch it or.
And I think that's the reason why I still have a preference to a hard number for most people. I have a preference for a hard number for myself most of the time. Yeah. And most of the time, Ron gave me a hard number, or he would give me an RPE with a cap on it. Like, I expect this to be an RPE 10, but just in case it's an RPE 6, we're not going over this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways to do that, but
or a weight range is also another way to kind of like auto-regulate.
But the principle of auto-regulation at its core is to protect you, the lifter, from doing something fucking stupid that you can't handle.
Because a lot of us are meatheads, and a lot of us just do stupid shit because we think, oh man, we did this last week.
If you can program percentage, if you can do percentage-based programming and be honest about how you feel every day and change it if it needs changed, or if you're going based off of a training max and not, I'm going to be honest with you, most people's maxes are lightning in a bottle maxes. Like, happen to feel really good one day, got a 10-pound bench PR, but have never done it more than once.
I mean, just
you know what I mean?
To speak on that for a little bit, I hit 405 in training on bench press like 2 or 3 times before I hit it in competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I hit it in competition, I hit 420. So like,
so I mean, but I mean, you've experienced that, right? There's probably wise, honestly, for most people in most circumstances, I would say your training max should be about 90% of your actual lightning in a bottle. I had a really good day at the meet max.
Yep.
Depending on the heavier the lifter and the more absolute load you have on the bar, probably should be a little bit more than that sometimes. Maybe a little bit less than that. Female lifters can get away with working with a higher percentage of their 1 rep max than men can. But again, that goes back to absolute load. But there's a lot of ways to look like that. Auto-regulation is basically to protect your ass, though. So you have to be honest about it.
Yeah.
And if you can't be honest about it, or you don't have a coach helping you stay honest about it, I very much would say stay on something percentage-based.
Right.
So, is what it is. But
the way, when I was programming for myself just before I got with Joe, and things were going really well as far as like weight moved and stuff, I planned everything from the start of my program at like 90%, 85% of my 1 rep max. I can't remember exactly, but it was beneath my 1 rep max.
Yeah.
Like base, and it was quantified by sets of 8, but I won't bother with the math, but essentially it was 90%.
Yeah.
And then be like 92, 95, and then we cut back for deload to be like 90 for 4 instead of 8.
Right.
And there was just like a progression, but it didn't start with as much as I could do. There was a lot of building before. There was probably 2 months before I actually started working with 100% at one point in time. And that was for my top set. And then it'd come back. And then we go past it the next week. But my working sets would still be below.
Keep in mind, he's talked about percentages of percentages, basically.
Yeah. So it's very hard to, like, without explaining the math, which I don't know that I could do that right now, because I'd have to pull it all back up. But it's probably not worth the time unless someone's really interested in it. They can just
basically, if your max is 100 pounds, he's calling his max 90 pounds and basing his percentage based off the 90 pounds and not off the 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very, very tiny, it's a bicep curl to Nathan, but that's a very, very tiny example. But simple math, that's what he's doing.
Yeah. But, it's just that slow progression. My numbers were always hard on all of my barbell movements, but everything on my accessory was just RPE based. Like, what do you feel like today when you get in there? Just essentially all of my accessory work was just like, get a good pump. Like,
Sure.
that was my whole goal. Just, it was still technically off season. So I didn't really need to be like hardcore strength training, because I started in like March or
Maybe February.
February. It was early on in the year, and I knew I wasn't competing until October.
Right.
So like I was just like, this is just like a hypertrophy thing with a little bit of progression on my SPD. That was literally all it was.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this, but basically, those auto regulation principles are basically to, they auto regulate. That's what they do, right? So they're basically put in place to keep you in check.
Mm-hmm.
And RPE 7 is not going to always be the same weight depending on how you feel every day.
Could be more, could be less, could be the same.
Could be the same. Yep, absolutely.
It just depends on the day.
So we have linear versus nonlinear versus undulating programming. Linear is very, very simple. We're starting this block off at 50% over 1 rep max, and by the last week of it, some 20-something weeks down the road or whatever it may be, we're going to end at 102% of our max for a new 1 rep max.
Yeah.
Very, very simple. Just drawing a line from point A to point B. Most programming, even if it's on RPE based, is going to do that. Right? You might go from sets of 10 and RPE 6 to the end of that block, you're doing sets of 10 and RPE 9. Next block, you're going to go 6 to 9 with 8s, 6 to 9 with 5s, 3s, 2s, 1s, whatever. Still linear programming. Right? Non-linear is basically what we talked about. It's pretty rare in powerlifting. It's going to be, I say it's rare. I mean, conjugate's probably still, think about your max effort dates on conjugate. Very, very non-linear. But what's still linear about conjugate is your dynamic days are probably going to progress through percentages. So it's kind of half and half. Or like something extreme like the Bulgarian method in weightlifting.
Right.
Where you're hitting daily maxes on a given lift. I feel like we're in agreement that's pretty rare in powerlifting to not have some type of linear progression.
Yeah.
I think the closest being conjugate, but like I said, even the dynamic work in conjugate is going to follow some type of progression, whether it's heavier percentage or a heavier band or heavier chain or whatever it may be. It's going to follow some type of, or even if it's progressing the speed in which you lift something. There's a lot of ways to look at that. But for the most part, it's half and half. It's not necessarily a non-linear. Like I said, I find that to probably be pretty rare. And where you might find that more often is the strength programming in a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Think about CrossFit. You may not have seen this. You may have sent me accessory work like this sometimes. It'll say like the CrossFit, the workout of the day for overhead squat might be 3, 3, 1, 1, 1. So basically you're going to find 2 heavy sets of 3 and you're going to find 3 individual heavy sets of 1. Well, that's going to change day to day. There's no given percentage. That would be an example of non-linear strength programming. Pretty common in a CrossFit gym, although I think most of the good ones have wisened up and moved on to bigger and better things than that too.
Yeah.
But that was original CrossFit prescription. Like if you had a strength day for your WOD, it might be 5 twos of a clean and jerk, and you might have to go find, basically you got 5 sets to find a 2 rep max clean and jerk, whatever it may be. That would be an example of nonlinear. And then undulating is actually still kind of linear, but basically what undulating does is it waves. So you'll have, if you have a light deadlift on week 1, you'll have a heavy deadlift on week 2, light on week 3, heavy on week 4. Or you might even, I know some strongman program, you only have 1 heavy deadlift day a month, and the rest might be speed work or axle work or something away from the true lift, if that makes sense. It might be 2 weeks light, 1 week heavy, 2 weeks light, 1 week heavy. It could be any waving motion of any barbell movement, essentially. So we undulated my deadlifts this last time me and Ron did, and it ended up being really good for me because I found it with both the volume and just the intensity of which we're deadlifting at now, I found it very hard to recover from reps at 500 plus pounds and go in the next week and do another set at 500 plus pounds.
Yeah.
So we found every 2 week a heavy deadlift was fine. And then the light week was basically maintenance, where I was doing 10 sets of one at 365.
Right.
Basically practice. Some stimulus there, enough to keep you familiar with the deadlift, keep you moving good, but it wasn't.
It wasn't like challenging. It wasn't making you die.
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
You weren't rolled over in the floor.
Sure.
Like,
yeah. I would be willing to bet if you, I would, that seems to be more and more popular. It definitely helped with me. I just wrote one for Dave Hayes. I think it's becoming more and more popular and more
accepted
in powerlifting programming now. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know if you've paid attention to or analyzed what Joe's doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see that later in programming more.
Not currently, because we're still just working on fixing things.
Yeah.
We are but getting close to we'll be 3 months out in a couple days. So I don't know. Next week is the last week of this block that he's working on me with. So don't know what's going to come of the next 3 months, if we're going to start going into more true strength training, or if we're going to continue to work on weaknesses and maybe do 2 months. I wouldn't be surprised, because of the rep range that we're working in. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't just do a month. That's honestly, right. I don't know. I've been putting my faith in him and just doing what he tells me to do.
You absolutely should. I would say a good learning experience would be when this is over with, is sit down and actually analyze what he's giving you.
Yeah.
And find patterns and stuff in it. But all that to say this, I discovered that Dave needed a need for this because we peaked him too fast this last meet.
Yeah.
Basically, he felt like shit in his last 2 weeks of training. Felt like he was strongest like 3 weeks out. That's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
You need to be strongest on meet day.
Oh yeah.
His age had a lot to do with it. He's a very strong man to be almost 60, but he's also dealing with a sub 1,300 pound total. So it's not just like mind-numbingly heavy for us or anything. But his age had a lot to do with it. He just wasn't recovering well from it. So now he doesn't squat heavy and deadlift heavy in the same week anymore. He has a week of heavy squats and then a week of heavy deadlifts. And we still squat and we still deadlift on the weeks we're not doing those things. So don't get me wrong. You don't just replace
one with the
other. But, on his easy squat week is going to be his hard deadlift week and vice versa. Yeah. For that program, we remained in a linear progression for bench press. So
I had no issues with bench press. So.
No issues with bench press whatsoever. He's recovering from it fine. So that pretty much stayed the same, with the exception of, because we're undulating, I was able to push a deload week out further. So we do have a deload week for just bench press in the middle of his program this time, which is, people don't tell you, but that's perfectly acceptable too. If your bench press feels like shit, it's okay to deload one lift. 100%. It's okay. You're not going to miss anything. You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
But I got to deload everything at the same time. Like, everything has to be according to plan, man. Like, that's one of the things that I've also learned from Joe, just watching some of the way he does things. Sometimes he won't write my stuff until the next day, right? So until I check in with him, he hasn't written anything for the next day. Sometimes he'll go ahead and, like, especially this past week, I was kind of like, I definitely need this day done on Monday because I'm going to be out Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, he doesn't really have enough time to, go day by day if I'm off of my normal schedule. Sure. So he was like, well, I got, the last 2 or 3 days done now, so you'll be good when you get back, kind of thing. But definitely week to week. So he's always like, how did this go? How did this go? And he's changing things based on feeling.
Sure.
So like we are doing programming essentially without deload. And we are just adjusting the program according to fatigue. So there is no true deload week. It has all been just
your coach auto-regulating you.
Yeah, pretty much. Like he is looking at it. He's deciding what I need to do based on some of the stuff is always RPE based. So that's always up to me to be honest with myself, which here lately I've been more honest. In the beginning, I was a little less honest with a couple of lifts, but for the most part, I've been pretty honest about, my RPE. Sometimes I don't even look at the RPE, and I'm just like, I just know what weight I have to do to survive.
Right.
And it may be something like he has me doing barbell curls and 30 seconds of banded curl or band curls. With a band. I was trying to think of a tension band, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, and those I just have to survive with an empty barbell because you do 15 of those and then 30 seconds of. Well, let me clarify. 15 at a 5:05 tempo, because 15 is like, oh man, you can just blast through those. Not at a 5:05 tempo.
No, that's rough, man. That's a slow tempo.
That is a very slow tempo, and I just do what I can to survive. I cannot put weight on the bar for that just to survive it. So I know I'm just like, I just have to get through these sets in the rest time, and it's only like 60 seconds rest. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm good and ready to go back in. It's like I'm dead after the second set.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Just surviving is the key.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But I mean, that auto regulation's there. And I don't guess I guess by definition, auto regulation is you doing it, but it's okay if your coach does it too. I mean, it's still you're being regulated, and that's the most important thing.
He checks everything the week before he writes the program.
I admire Joe for being able to do that, because I personally don't think that I would have time to write daily for people or even weekly, to be honest with you. Ron wrote weekly for me, and I really don't know how Ron manages that. I like, a 4, 8, 12, 16 week plan, and then let's adjust on the fly in real time based on how you feel. And everybody probably does that different. I can imagine
I think it's probably acceptable to do both. I think the biggest thing about weekly is that there's already a template, right? So your week one, your first week of the block is going to take the most time, but he's not going to change things mid-block unless there is something blatantly obvious that needs to be addressed.
Sure.
So like he's only like in the block changed things like 1 or 2 times, and it's mostly been with squats or deadlifts, and it's been very minute changes. So the template is still the template, but there are changes to certain movements.
Sure.
Everything else is basically the same, and that's probably why he is able to do it, is because he only changes things when he has to.
Sure.
But he leaves it open to be changed.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, maybe closer to what I'm doing than I thought then.
Yeah.
I know Ron did write weekly for me. Yeah. So every Sunday I emailed him results of the week, and he emailed me back what I was doing the next.
Yeah.
So, good shit, but it is what it is. But all these things are things you're looking for. If you're not going to hire a coach, they should be things you're looking for in your own programming. They should be things you're looking for in your coach. And it just kind of furthers our point, last podcast point about bad coaching or bad templates or just buying shit is not going to take into account whether or not you can handle more volume or can't handle that much volume or need a change of intensity. It's also not going to take into account nagging injury. It's not going to take account you had a birthday party to go to and you got a little too drunk with your friends. It's not going to take into account stressful times at work.
Having a baby.
Yeah, absolutely. None of those things are being accounted for unless you are accounting for them or a coach is accounting for them. So if you have a coach that's unwilling to do that, then they're not much of a coach.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a big thing as far as coaching goes. Like if you're coming with them with like, hey man, this just happened. Let's say something severe. My dad just died.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not gonna lift this week. And like, well, this is your plan. You have to lift. If they show no sympathy to that, I'm gone. I'm like, nah, dude. Like we're just cutting ties right here, because you can't be like that. And then like smaller things, you got too drunk. Like, yeah, I feel pretty shitty. Like, well, the plan's the plan. You either do it or you don't. And it's like, there's a time and place for that, but
expression of disappointment and you didn't make a good decision.
Yeah,
should absolutely, as a good coach, you should absolutely tell them, hey, you're in fucking prep. You can't be going to get fucking loaded every weekend.
Yeah,
you really shouldn't be drinking at all during prep. That conversation can still be had, but for the sake of the lifter safety, you should still have a coach that is willing to say,
well, since you did this, let's try and adjust.
Even if it's since you did this, get your barbell stuff done, go home.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like. Even if that's the bare minimum amount of adjustment you get, it's still better an adjustment than
then
The rules are the rules.
yeah. It's hard to be. I mean, for some people, maybe it's just the way they were raised or the whatever. It's hard to be really military when it comes to programming somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a coach in Brandon that would, if I was being a pussy, he would tell me I was being a pussy. Like, it was like,
I think there's a difference in that.
and that then
like, it's one thing if it's like, oh well, this feels really heavy. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
tough shit. Like squat it
so-
anyway.
Yeah. Because if they know you have the ability to do it, then it's just kind of like.
Now, if I came to Brandon and I said, "Hey, man, been a rough week, haven't been sleeping well. Like, what do I need to do to adjust?" Had a family member die. Had my baby was born this week.
Mhm.
Had a car accident. You know, I'm a little banged up, nothing major. Like
Right.
those kind of things, like should be adjusted for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah. It's like I said,
even if it's just a little touch of insomnia, like you're not sleeping good lately, like that's going to take either take weight off the bar, or take reps away from the
Yeah.
sets, or take sets away from the workout, one or the other, or some combination of the things.
Yeah.
But you should have somebody that's willing to make that adjustment. I do think too, as a lifter and a coach, I'm not honest enough about this as a lifter, but again, as a coach, we cannot protect you from what we don't know.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you are paying for something, paying for a service. And you should be more open and honest with your coach about how you're feeling and how those things are going for you.
Mhm.
Basically, when I say those things, I mean the more easily predicted things like your sleep schedule, your work schedule,
Mhm.
your eating schedule. You should be more willing to, or even minor aches and pains, you should be more open to talking to your coach about them and less stubborn than most of us tend to be.
Yeah.
I feel like.
I can talk about experience on Saturday. I was doing my dumbbell pressing. It was like a slight incline. And first 10 reps, I felt pretty decent. I was on 3 sets 10. Second 10, I didn't feel too good. I don't know why. They just didn't feel good. I told him that. I was like, something feels weird. Don't know what's going on. Third set, I got 2 or 3 reps in, and my hands were so sweaty that the dumbbell slipped, and it caught this side of my forearm to just cramp.
Yeah.
And I was just like, put the dumbbells down. I was like, I'm stopping because that freaked me out.
Yeah.
I was like, that hurt really bad.
Yeah.
It went away after a while and it was all good, but it was like in the moment, it's just like I told him that. I was like, this is an issue. Hopefully it's just a freak thing and not like something that's going to be recurring. But in case something happens, and I had a video of it so I could send it, like, this is where it shifted. There was a whole lot of pain right here. Dropped the bar or the dumbbells.
Yeah.
So, and earlier that day, there was something going on with. There was something else that bothered me too. I can't think of it now. Oh, when I was doing deadlifts the day before, it caught my tricep all the way up to my shoulder when I hit the floor one time, and I was like, I don't know what happened, but this happened. You know, just it's very little things.
Just a jolt that caused it to cramp or something.
Yeah, I mean, when he looked at it, he said he gave me a very medical explanation and just told me every single muscle that was affected and why it was affected. It was because I caught the
Rebound.
of the barbell and just went from here to here, and it was fine. Like, it went away, but just little things like that doesn't, like, it could be nothing, but you don't know until you talk about it, especially if you're not familiar. Like,
that was an unfamiliar feeling. So you needed to know
on
what was
both
going
both things, it was just like that felt really weird. So I was just like, I'm just going to tell them. And if it's something where I feel dumb afterwards, I'd rather know than not know.
Right.
I'd rather know than
It's almost like you have to check your ego sometimes.
Yeah.
Almost. But by and large, all these things are aspects of your programming, aspects of your coaching that if you're not getting, you should probably assess whether or not that coach is good. Back to last week's conversation to some extent. There's a lot to look out for, and I'm very, very aware, hyper aware that you can make a lot of good gains on templates and beginner programmings. Me and you both have made good gains on squats and milk.
Yeah.
Which is about as stupid and boneheaded and linear as it gets.
Yeah.
It's, hey, every time you go in the gym, you're putting 5 more pounds on the bar, baby.
Yep.
But I mean, when done responsibly, it's yielded good results for us. It has. I mean, tons and tons of squat, work capacity and stuff has been built off those programs. So, I mean, you can do it on a template. It still takes you being smart enough as a lifter to say, I just don't feel like I can do this today.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
The bar will be there
Tomorrow.
the next time. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But I mean, you have to be open and honest with yourself, and you have to be open and honest with your coach. But if you're doing those things and then things aren't getting done for you, either you're really bad at coaching yourself or your coach is really bad at coaching you.
Yeah. Either way, one of those people needs to be fired and someone else needs to be hired.
I just talked about I have a hard time following my own program, and there's going to be a point in this powerlifting block, I'm going to be honest with you, where I say I'm either going to go back into an RP based off season and not fuck with us for a while, or I'm going to get frustrated and I'm going to hire Ron back.
Yeah.
I mean, but I also know that.
Yeah.
And knowing that is half the battle. You know what I mean? Like, I would like to be able to 100% handle my own off season and not have to, bother Ron with it until I'm, 3 or 4 months out from the meet and then get dialed in.
Yeah.
But just being realistic, you know what I mean? Like, and you do have to, is it a weakness that I can't follow my own programming? Yeah. But it also is a strength for me to be able to accept the fact that I can't follow my own programming and that I need some help. Yeah, it's not a weakness to ask for help.
Absolutely. Yeah. That goes back to keeping your ego in check. If you're willing to go to somebody else, because like for the longest time, and I had messaged Joe before anything, I was like, I think I want to get Joe to do my prep, and I was like, I don't really want to spend the money on an off season. I can handle my own off season. I'm almost done with this program that I had laid out. I was like 2 months out from finishing it or whatever. And I was like, I'll get him to do the last 3 months and that'll be good enough. I feel really confident in that. And at some point it was just like, my lower back hurts too much from squatting. Something's wrong with I need somebody to fix my squat. We tried to fix it ourselves. Couldn't quite get there for whatever reason. Tried a whole bunch of different things. Eventually just went to Joe and said, I need my squat fixed because I'm fucking hurting and I can't keep doing this. And he said, okay.
Yeah.
And guess what he did?
He's fixed it.
I was willing to accept the help. I wasn't so egotistical that I thought I was the only one who could do it or whatever. It was probably a culmination of changing the way I squatted, some rehab work, getting chiropractic work done. It's probably a combination of everything that really just fixed it. It stopped hurting so much. So,
but it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's on its way anyway.
Yeah. That's the key, is just being willing to say, hey, I need help from somebody.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing, especially I'll tell you this, powerlifting is much more a team sport than most people realize.
Yeah.
From the people that handle you on meet day to your coach, to the people that lift with you and lift around you, being able to lean on those people. And if you're not leaning on those people, you're doing yourself a disservice. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you less so now because you have Joe to bounce ideas off of. And I'm assuming, based on our conversation, that Joe's really good about answering things back. Yeah. But me and you talk about things nearly daily about what we could do better. I could do better. You could do better. Or just troubleshooting things. Yeah. On a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, sending programs, just being like, what do you think of this? What do you think could be changed about this? Do you think the volume's good? Like, stuff like that. Anything I'm missing? Like, most of the time, I think me and you are pretty thorough when we make our programs, and we don't have to. We're sending more for validation than for actual like troubleshooting, but
we do that for each other too.
Yeah,
and we're typically not too. We don't get pissed off when we say,
hey,
this needs to change.
You missed something. Like,
I know you do it with mine daily, but one thing that we adjusted in your program before you got with Joe was you had written your deadlifts in a way that your drop sets were only like 5% less than your top sets.
Yeah, right? It was either 5 or 10%. I can't remember.
But I think I remember saying, hey man, this is going to be, you're so strong now, the CNS fatigue is going to be great. You're not going to, it was 10 pounds. That's what it was. Your drop set was 10 pounds. And I was like, and we changed it to 10%, I think.
Okay.
That's what it was. But I was like, you don't need to do 10 pounds. You probably need to do more like 10%.
Yeah.
Which for Nathan is a 60. I mean, it sounds like we're taking a lot of weight off the bar because it's for him, it's a 65, 70 pound drop for a 10% reduction. But he gets into his program a week or two and he's like, okay, I understand. Because the CNS fatigue is so great, I understand why we took 10% instead of just 10 pounds.
Yeah.
A set of 8 at 545 is hard enough. And then to have to back it up with 2 sets of 8 at 535,
it's
huge. But go backing off to 475, 485, that's
a lot more
That's
manageable.
manageable. Yeah, absolutely. It's still great breakdowns.
It's still super challenging. I still felt a ton of fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes it's just little things like that and you have to keep the lifter in mind. Like some of my female lifters, I absolutely could have taken 10 pounds off the bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they have a 350-pound deadlift. We can do a drop set at,
325, 315, somewhere
like
around
that.
there.
But like you deadlift 700 pounds. you know what I mean? There's only so many licks over 500 your body's going to take before it's just like,
hey,
fucking
I'm
done,
out.
son. Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I mean, this isn't fun no more. Like I'm checking out. So I mean, like you have to do things. And I've had this conversation with Ron. I had it with Brandon before. There was been times in drop sets where I'm like, first set went fine, second set barely break the first one off the floor. Had 7 or 8 more reps to do, and just like, listen, man, like I'm gonna drop it down to 3 plates and finish it. But like this was just a lot today.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I'll do better next week, and that's fine. Sometimes it's just a matter of doing that and say I'm gonna come back and get it next week, and it doesn't even have to be an adjustment in programming. But shit, that just happens sometimes. It's part of it. But yeah, definitely less likely to be able to achieve those things if you're having like really super hard numbers, like and that close to somebody that's that strong. Like 10% for you is almost. I mean, it's not even that's a 10 pounds for you is not even a 2% reduction.
Yeah.
So like. That's you know what I mean. That's still a heavy deadlift.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely the difference in getting it and missing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah, my mindset was just when I was looking at it, I was looking at the week 1 and not the week 12. I was looking at I'm only doing 475. I can do 2 more sets at 465. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, but the problem is 475 turns into 575, and the 465 turns into 565, and that's.
And
now all of a sudden this is an issue.
It is an issue, yeah.
Like that first week, sure, 4 sets of 8, 450 to 475 pounds, we can do it, baby. But
the problem was down the road.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much abuse you're going to take at those higher percentages. Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it was Mark Bell that said there's only so many 1 reps that you got.
Yeah, you only have so many. That's absolutely true. You only have so many of those.
There's only so many maximal effort 1 rep lifts that you can do in your entire lifetime. So pick and choose them wisely. Do you want to do an extra 10 pounds at the gym one day, or do you want to do an extra 100 pounds at a meet one day?
Yeah, you got to pick it. That could be a whole nother podcast.
That could absolutely.
Ego checking, basically, you know what I mean?
The title of that episode, Fuck Your Ego.
Fuck your ego. And it's easy to have one, especially when, me and you have a lot of our self-worth and mental well-being tied up in this sport. I'm not really stronger than anybody, but I'm not stronger than any powerlifter, but I'm stronger than any gym bro. You know what I mean? Like, so like, there's definitely some pride and ego tied up in it, but also, I mean, to keep that in check, you have to be, if you want to be able to call yourself strong and be strong, you have to stay healthy. It doesn't do you any good to be the guy that said, I used to bench 405.
Yep.
We joke about that all the time, but what you used to do doesn't do you a damn bit of good now.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to do these things, whether it's hiring a coach, keeping yourself in check, working off of a training max instead of a true 1 rep max, whatever it may be. Like, you have to do these things. If you want to stay in the game, you're going to have to do these things to stay in it. And every one of those things means checking your ego.
Just thinking about this older guy that was at the gym. He's always there with his 2 sons. I think there's 2 sons.
Fucking yoked, this guy. He's a lightweight lifter, too. I think he's like a 220 or 200.
He looks about my size, maybe a little thinner, but still.
He's not as tall as you.
I couldn't say. I couldn't say. I don't really remember. But he's a really cool dude. Talked to him just a little bit. Older guy, like I said, still benches 405, and he said, "Yeah, it's not that much." And I'm like, 405 is a good lick, man.
405, and you're in your 40s, like
right. That's
like.
I'm sure that would easily be a state record.
Oh, probably.
Like,
yeah, I mean, I know he's a 600+ pound squatter when he's healthy too.
Yeah.
So like, he's a good powerlifter.
Yeah, I mean, he used to powerlift and he used to bodybuild, and he just kind of doesn't do either anymore. He just
does enough to both to stay healthy and strong. He definitely does both of those things. But I talked to him about that though, and everything he does now is basically ego checking systems, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's old enough now. He knows when he hurts. He knows when he feels good. He knows what he can do and what he can't do.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't venture outside those things. He knows when to push a little bit harder for bigger numbers and when to say,
Not it.
Maybe today I shouldn't go over 3 plates. You know what I mean? Like, but he's going to be doing that. He is, when you see that man, he's very obviously got 20 or 30 more years of lifting in him.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's that healthy. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very small part of the population to say they're still going to be lifting weights when they're 70.
Yeah.
But that guy will.
Oh yeah,
So,
for
like,
sure. And that comes down to being smart.
Hell yeah, it does.
That's all. Because there's a guy. He's in his 80s or 90s. I just saw something about him on Facebook. I think he calls himself a bodybuilder. I mean, he's 80 to 90 years old. Like, he can only do so much, but he's still in the gym and he's still lifting weights. I mean, he's not what bodybuilding is now, obviously, like, because he's that age, but
he's still healthy and strong.
he's still in the gym. He's still lifting weights. I mean, that says more than probably 99% of 80, 90-year-olds.
And if you have any self-respect for you, and if you have any real love for the game, you should be thinking about what it looks like, what lifting looks like for you 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now.
And think about Arnold. He still lifts.
Yeah, I mean,
all the
I would like to go to my grave doing this.
Yeah.
If I died in the gym, I would be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's, good Lord willing, it won't be what kills me, but you know what I mean? Like,
as long as it's not some idiot just dropping a bunch of weight on you.
So, different story. There was a bodybuilder killed this week from essentially a little bit his own ego and a little bit of bad squat.
Yep.
I
heard about that.
Yeah.
Joe was talking about it recently.
Squat U posted some footage from it. They didn't
They didn't show
it all
yeah.
because obviously the man died, and I think it's kind of disrespectful.
It would
but,
be, absolutely.
A lot of things went wrong, but a bad spot was a pretty damn good bit of it.
I didn't watch the video, so I can't say from firsthand like what happened.
Well, it basically broke his cervical spine, so it's basically like internally decapitated by a barbell. So,
was he high bar squatting then?
I just know the bar, according to Squat U, the bar shifted up his back, but had fallen forward, backward toward the spotter, and I guess when the spotter maybe stood him up or whatever happened, caused the bar to roll forward and hit him in the neck.
I see. Yeah.
Which, this guy he looked to be sub 200 pounds. He wasn't he couldn't have been more than like a 200 if he was a power lifter. He couldn't have been more than like 220.
Right.
So like, it was a pretty heavy squat. But
Yeah, I think Joe said it was 395.
Squat U said it was 460.
460.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which isn't the heaviest squat in the world, but for his size, it's a pretty heavy squat. Yeah. So I mean, it was twice his body weight. So I mean, it's a lot to fucking think about.
Yeah. That basically.
But
respect the bar, respect the weight.
The bar, what you're doing, respect.
135 could kill you.
Respect your own technique or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, if it just because you can don't mean you should sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a reason why we build toward a peak and we're not squatting, 80, 90, 100% of our 1 rep max all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying 100% sure that's what he was doing, but get spotters you can trust, man.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, absolutely. I think side spots would have saved that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. If it had been
unloaded
thinking,
if it had been unloaded on a side spotter, it would have been at their waist.
Yeah, they would have caught it right here, and he could have gotten out of it.
And even if they would have had to throw it down and couldn't hold on to it, it would have been fine. But he would have been out from under the bar.
Also, if he had just stepped forward, like if he had been on his own and he had just stepped forward instead of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility of that. I mean, I haven't watched the full. I haven't got a chance to see the full video, so it's hard to speculate. But
I don't know that I want to, just for my own peace of mind.
It's definitely a freak accident, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
It's not happening all the fucking time.
No.
I think the social media makes the world a lot smaller place, or seem like a lot smaller place. So when you see this, you're like, this guy does what I did. He just fucking killed himself. That is a 1 in a billion accident, though.
Everything had to go wrong.
Yeah.
But everything.
You're probably more likely to get bit by a shark, struck by lightning, and win the lottery all on the same day. like, honest to God, like that's how rare this injury is, right?
Yeah.
But like, it happened.
It did happen.
Fuck.
Rest in peace. I don't know the lifter's name. I think they said he was Indian or Indonesian or something.
Indonesian. Yeah.
Indonesian.
Yeah. I don't remember his name either, but sorry for that guy.
Yeah, and his family. Hopefully everything's okay. them. Obviously, it won't be, but
All right. Well, dad jokes if we got them.
dad jokes, I have like a bunch saved.
I just have one.
Just one?
Yeah, I just have one.
Go for it.
I don't know if it's really a dad joke, but it's kind of daddy. That's kind of funny in its own way.
Daddy.
Anyway, this is actually a real thing. Have you heard about the bod pods that you can be buried in? That like
Yeah.
hardwood trees grow from,
Yeah.
basically, so your body acts as fucking fertilizer for this fucking tree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a kind of a neat concept because then you're kind of in a way you're kind of there forever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a cool concept. I just wanted to request that that's the way I want to be buried, and I just need it to be a pecan tree.
So after you die, everyone can eat your nuts?
Yep. These nuts.
That's pretty good. Mine are that one's probably better than all the jokes that I'm about to give because mine are all really bad dad jokes. But as a new dad, I have to
Yeah, I mean, this is official right here. This
official
is
now, like
groundbreaking shit right here. We're not just pretending anymore.
not just saying dad jokes to say dad jokes. So my boss said he was going to fire the employee with the worst posture. I have a hunch it's going to be me.
That's pretty good.
I told my wife to embrace her mistakes, so she gave me a hug. I accidentally gave my wife a glue stick instead of lipstick. She's still not talking to me.
That must have been that Gorilla Glue.
I walked in on my girlfriend having sex with her personal trainer. I told her this isn't working out. She's having too many cheat days. that one, yeah.
Ugh.
I thought it was funny, but yeah. Oh well, this one's. I'll end it on this one. So, yesterday I couldn't make it out if someone was waving at me or the person behind me. In other news, I lost my job as a lifeguard.
And other news.
In other news, but that's all I got for today. So, I think we ran pretty long today.
I
So
think we did.
just a little bit.
I got more programs right. Got to write Casey's, got to write my own. So we got competitions to go win.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I got a baby to take care of.
yep, still have a competition to win, though.
Still have a competition to
Doesn't
win.
change that. So,
No, but that's still about 3 months away. So
yep, you're going to
still
do
got
good.
plenty of time. As long as I can get my 600-pound squat, I think we'll be okay.
You got it all day, baby.
6'11", but
6'11 is what we need now. 606 the record. 6'11 is what would break it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I might could do 609 or 60.
You can chip a Can you chip
Eight.
a record in the WRPF?
I want to say they have their clamps that are a pound each or
They're
whatever.
2.5 kilograms a piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought they were a pound.
But no, they do have fractional plates. I
guess
think
we
I
just
think
have
the
to
rule
see.
is you can chip records, and I think you can chip for the win, but you can't in a normal attempt selection. You can't. It has to be a 2.5 kilogram increment.
Yeah.
But if you have to do it to beat somebody, or if you have to do it for a record,
Yeah.
then it's
We'll
Okay.
see closer to October what I'm feeling like, and maybe we'll just have 6'11", just because. But we'll see. I'm
Are you going to have get to have open dialogue with Joe the day of the meet?
if it's the same day as his meet, I won't.
Oh, because of the American Pro. That's
Mhm.
right.
I want to say it's the same day, but I could be wrong. But I think it is. But either way,
We're pretty good at attempt selection, so I'm sure he'll have attempts planned out for you. And if he doesn't, we've done really good with
Yeah.
attempt selection before in the past.
either way, there will be a plan in place.
I don't think have you had a single grindy final lift that I can recall? I mean, I know early in your career SPF stuff you've missed third lifts, but
Yeah. Well,
but-
I've only done 3 meets.
by and large, I feel like November it was pretty much every one of your last meets were like RPE 9,
Oh yeah,
like a little
like-
left in the tank. Like,
yeah, there was. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have any issues on the USPA meet, but I've only done 3 meets, like I said. first SPF meet, I missed a third bench, and that was it. And then second SPF meet, I missed a squat and a bench. And then USPA, I got all 9 and everything went smoothly, but I also didn't. My bench was high, but my squat and my deadlift were not high. So
we didn't have to in the deadlift, though.
yeah, deadlift, we were already winning the weight class, and we were not winning the lifter of the day. So
Yeah,
it was
you would have had to have had a 700-pound squat that day to win lifter of the day.
Yeah, Tank kind of crushed it by like 60 dots or something like that. So there was no way I was touching anything that day. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
All right, guys, that's it. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify or whatever you listen to.
Follow us.
Yeah, follow us. Sip it and rip it.
Nathan Skedios.
At ZG_Summer Shred Journey. Still haven't changed.
Subject to change.
Subject to change. But yeah, that's it though.
That is it.
Yeah, you can follow us at Coleman Barbell too.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
At Coleman_Barbell, but still. Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Be good.